Hello, my name's Joe, and today I'm in discussion with my good friend Tim, who is a long term member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this program is slightly shrouded in kind of secrecy and a little bit of enigma. But what I want to do in this discussion is find out a little bit more, kind of get the inner scoop, because he's been going to meetings for years. And so I want to ask him um, what are the benefits of AA? What got him to AA? Um, what are the 12 steps? What would a person expect to find in a meeting? And I hope at the end that it's something that um, is useful both for those who are just curious, but also for those who might be experiencing issues with alcohol or any other addiction and are wondering what to do. And maybe they're thinking about, well, maybe a 12-step program is good for me. Well, this, I hope, will help in that curiosity and that investigation. And so, with no further ado, let's crack on. I'm going to ask you a bit about your journey into AA. What brought you to AA?
Uh, well, I was asked after a rehab stay to attend AA so that I could stay sober. It was that simple. It was a practical recommendation from counselors who took my money. So it seemed like a good opportunity to stay sober, to avoid the hopelessness of a life of drinking. I mean, I had a about 12 years I was drinking uncontrollably, and anybody who's had that experience, they'll do anything when that happens. So for me, it was just a matter of having been exposed to a formal kind of rehab setting, enjoying that experience, realizing that my drinking was a problem. Why not attend a 12-step fellowship and see if they could maintain my sobriety with some recommendations?
And is that what you when you refer to that kind of 12 years of drinking and the end of that, is that what you would refer to as a kind of rock bottom then? Something like that?
Perhaps, yeah. I think in a rehab environment where your family intervenes and says, "Hey, we think it'd be a good idea if you had this experience." Um, I suppose the rock bottom for me was sort of revealed to me through a short term, a 28-day formal inpatient rehab. Um, Being forced to be sober, I think you see your life perhaps for the first time clearly, you know, without the compulsive uh, activity involved. So, yeah, it was. I think the rock bottom was sort of perhaps within those 12 years, that career, there was a lot of kind of scary experiences, um, situations where perhaps I should have died, dangerous situations involving cars, involving other alcoholics, involving lots of bad judgment. So when you say, this is something we discuss often in 12-step environment, this idea of not only what brought you here, but an emotional rock bottom or a physical rock bottom, being in a prison cell, uh, uh, waking up from a horrendous hangover, a 2 or 3 day hangover where you no longer have control of your faculties, your body, your mind. So yeah, rock bottoms in sobriety are very different. Yeah, emotional bottoms, emotional kind of dropouts, as we say. They're 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 uh, they're a joy, frankly, compared to what I experienced as an alcoholic, for sure.
So you talk about those kind of emotional rock bottoms, and that gives me the impression that these 12-step programs are not just dealing with abstinence from alcohol. There's something else going on there, isn't there? There's more than just abstinence.
Right. Well, we say in fellowship that the alcohol or the drugs or whatever compulsive behavior you're using is just a symptom. It's
Right.
just a symptom of dealing with yourself, dealing with who you are, dealing with your emotional fabric, you know, your humanity, I guess. So, using alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, some people it's gambling, some people it's shopping, So the point is that we can't really outrun ourselves. And I think uh, being exposed to sobriety, even in short doses as an addict or an alcoholic, is really revealing. You're like, who am I? What are these feelings here? What have I been suppressing my whole life?
Yeah.
So those are great opportunities for people in 12 steps to wake up and smell the coffee and finally get some taste of what sobriety feels like. Um, and in some cases, it can be very traumatic, right? Who am I? What am I meant to be
Mm,
doing?
yeah.
What's this higher power discussion? What does that even mean? So they're all good questions to be asking sober, right? Because like I remember being high or being drunk and just having these kind of nonsensical discussions about, hey man, what's this all about? What am I doing here? Just this kind of stony, spacey um, discussions about existence. And actually, sober, those are constructive conversations, you
Mm,
know, because we can actually come up with these practical plans. What to do? How do I earn money? How do I have a relationship? How do I give back to this fellowship that saved my life? Big questions for sure, and useful and practical things that I can apply.
So it sounds like in these meetings, the structure is based around these things called the 12 steps. And I'm wondering if you could maybe just describe to us what does that look like? What are they, these 12 steps? What do they do? Obviously, I'm hearing that they give a structure, but what is the kind of structure there?
Well, the first step is an admission of the illness, that admitting that I am an alcoholic. That's the first step.
Mm,
Um, and that's usually easy for most alcoholics because they've either been told that or they just have behaviorally they understand that they can't stop
mm,
willingly.
mm,
And the big book of AA goes into a lot of detail about how this is actually an insurmountable issue. You cannot will yourself out of active alcoholism. It just can't be done. And millions have tried and millions have failed. So that's why the text is important. We move from the initial declaration or admission or some kind of a identity. Once we accept that we are in fact alcoholic,
mm,
then we move into
yeah.
uh, well, what's the solution? Um, and the steps lay out, without going into a lot of detail, um, how I become responsible for my life historically, and how I become responsible for decisions I make moving forward. Now that's done through a what's called a a fearless and thorough moral inventory. So technically, the fourth step, you write out what am I resentful at, and what is my part in these resentments. Um, After I have a list of my flaws as a result of that process, I can then flip these flaws into values, and then start practicing these values in my everyday life. So, for example, say I'm dishonest inherently as an alcoholic. The opposite value would be, well, to be honest with people. Um, the subsequent step states we humbly asked uh, to be removed of these shortcomings, meaning we're asking something besides us to help us remove these flaws. Well, to be humble, I need to be honest in order to practice and be humble about this thing being removed. And then, of course, they say it's an inside job over time, over months, over years. As we practice these values, we come to see our part in our behavior more clearly.
Mm.
If I'm dishonest, or if I exaggerate, or if I embellish, I can immediately notice that and correct it. Uh, Other steps deal with apologies, amends,
Mm.
making things right. Uh, and it's pretty daunting, but in fact, it's a very simple procedure that you work through with a sponsor type person. They guide you through it. We have a text that accompanies these steps, these actions. Eventually, we get to a where we're asked to practice both meditation and prayer concerning our behavior and higher power's will for us. That's known as the 11th step. And then finally, at the very end, we get to the 12th step, which is a step in which we're asked to do service and practice these steps as they were practiced with us. So it's a full circle. We then find somebody who's coming into the program who has no experience with the steps, and then we sit down with them. We discuss their admission or their qualifications as an alcoholic, and then we do the same thing. And then eventually we we indoctrinate in that person the steps that were indoctrinated to us. And so they then find someone else to help. And there's this pyramid effect where more and more people are given this information. Hopefully, they're benefited over time. Their behavior changes ever so slowly and slightly, and they're able to do service in that 12-step process. And
May, may,
it's
may I
yeah,
ask you a question there, Tim? That, sorry to interrupt you, but may I ask you, you know, you use the word there, indoctrination, and I understand that, and then you use the word higher power, and I know that this kind of aspect of the of 12-step program is sometimes a little bit difficult for people, isn't it? The idea of maybe higher power, or maybe the notion of a god, or could you speak to that a little? Because I know that sometimes people come to meetings and they find the use of the word God difficult in their kind of secular life. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little.
yeah, yeah, sure. I mean, I had the same reservations when I heard those terms. For years, I called it the G word because it was so charged. You know, I was raised Episcopalian and just pushed it all away. Didn't have any kind of formal religious adherence. But when I like as you described, when I heard these words mentioned in meetings, my first meetings, my first years months in the fellowship, I had immediate aversion, like, oh goodness, I have no faith whatsoever. And I suppose when I put that question up to my life at that in that current moment, like, what did I have to lose? And that was kind of my feeling, like, well, if I have no faith or I have no understanding of a higher power or even a sort of a karmic guidance or just basic altruism, good and bad. I had no kind of concept of that as an active alcoholic. I thought, well, I'm certainly willing to explore the idea of one, just we say we come to believe, so just this other expression I hear used often in fellowship is just act as if, as if something may assist me. And it's a very lofty notion. What are we talking about? Supernatural, hocus pocus, like what, uh, man in the sky, man in the clouds is going to assist me. That all was just too something I couldn't relate to. So the idea was, I've kind of turned my life into a catastrophe. Why don't I just sort of press the pause button here, and if there is something out there, I will allow it to guide me. You know. So essentially, it was just sort of a secession of ego. I think was the ask. Just stop ruining things yourself. If there is something out there, perhaps it can show you something you haven't considered. And that's all that's really asked of us early on, is we're asked to consider or come to or act as if. And that's usually enough for somebody who's struggling or in pain or needs that guidance. Um, and subsequently, I'm quite interested in religious philosophies, and I do like the idea of an intelligent approach towards, well, what does this religion say? What does this religion say? What does this religion say? Aha. Well, they all have this, most of them have a common denominator, which is some intelligent design, some creator beyond our own, concepts. And that was enough, to put a few weeks together where something removed my will to drink, my cravings, something removed them from me within about 6 or 8 weeks, which, if you think about it, is phenomenal. That's really, that goes beyond any explanation that I can offer. So let's lean into that. Let's lean in. Let's investigate more. What happens when I reduce my ego more? When my will becomes second option to some benevolent force. And I think as recovery shows many people over time, it's almost as though the ego reduction is the goal, right? But if I focus on something besides myself, the ego naturally is reduced. And then, of course, I get into that step work. I do my inventory. I see my part in things. I'm able to offer apology, physical amends for past behaviors. I'm able to then correct myself when I see these flaws come up, because I now have knowledge of them. So it's a very practical exercise, these 12 steps.
I'm,
And then,
I'm
of course, Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Tim. I'm getting the sense of coming from a quite closed position to more of a openness to the notion that there can be change, there can be a difference in who we think we are. We can change that, we can change that identity, And I'm wondering if you could talk to having yourself gone through those steps. What have been the benefits for you in your life?
Well, the text talks about very these what are called promises. So these very dynamic promises are gifted to us. Things like our fear of people, fear of economic insecurity. Um, we actually will become more excited about giving back rather than taking or earning or prospering ourselves, which, if you think about it, it's a phenomenal concept, right? I mean, those are very daunting promises to offer anyone. And over time, as we build sobriety, as we give back, as we see our kind of our own adventures broaden and our ability to access gratitude broaden, it's nothing short of phenomenal. It's a really dynamic experience because really all I knew as an active alcoholic was partying and excess and disappointment, failed relationships, failed businesses, um, this whole kind of bravado, bragging, that all went away in recovery, and what replaced it was um, a sense of purpose, a sense of self, and a sense of I know service sounds corny, but like the act of service is such a nourishing experience for this alcoholic. Um, chairing a meeting, helping somebody work through those initial steps. Um, being let down in the past was just soul crushing. Oh, I can't go on. This is awful. Or I didn't get the job, or I didn't get the girl, right? And now it's like wasn't meant to be. There's a sense of uh, ordinance, or if I didn't, I work in the acting community, so a lot of my time I'm told, oh, thank you for coming in, but you're not the right person. I hear that all day long for years, and after a while, I've come to understand that, like, the jobs that I am given are gifts, are okay. Now you're going to do your best, give your best performance. You're going to give your 110%, and the rest of the time, it's fine. It's okay. Being told no is part of my business. It's no problem. um,
Don't they say life on life's terms? Or there's a phrase like that, isn't there? Life on life's terms. I feel that
right.
that's maybe what you're describing there, aren't you? That
Yeah, it's
acceptance. Yeah.
it's just another way of saying it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Um, my parents died recently, and uh, it's okay. They had long lives. They lived to the best of their ability. They parented as best as they could. They made mistakes. They enjoyed themselves. They taught me a sense of grace and gratitude and benevolence that I wouldn't have been able to say those things about them had I not been sober and had many years with them as a sober alcoholic. So yeah, the phrase "life on life's terms" is just another way of saying, I'm a guest here. I'm not
Yeah.
running the show.
Mm.
I'm one of billions, and I want to behave in a manner that's in keeping with my values and my worldviews. You know, those things are important to me, right? My community is important. My children are important. My partner is important to me. Best way to celebrate them is to live a life that reflects my values.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, thanks ever so much, Tim, for sharing with us,
Of course.
about your experience, strength, and hope. And I'm really enjoyed this conversation actually. So thank you. Thanks ever so much. And I'm going to stop there, Tim, actually. So I'm going to press that old button.